yes, the ever expanding house.
Yeah,
adventure
so now we're under contract again, so we're going through it again. So
okay. Like the studio system,
they got me. Well, so yeah, hopefully we're hoping before Christmas we'll be in that house.
That's moving quite quickly.
Well, I mean, we already kind of like went through a lot of it already, and a lot of it transfers over. So now we're just got to go through the inspections again with this new house and get the appraisal done, and then there's a lot of things. Lawyers have to look at papers, and what they call the underwriter has to get the deal all done, and it's probably going to be the second week in December is what I'm hoping. So.
Just in time. Yeah, for Christmas.
And we can, once we know things are going well, we can start boxing up shit. So, we'll be
once you get closer to
so we'll try to be as prepared to leave as possible, because technically my move out date is on Christmas Day. Like that's the day we're supposed to give up the keys. So,
wow,
yeah, I know, right? So it just ended up being that way. I might try to get them to let us go to the end of the month just to have a few extra days,
give you a little more leeway,
but we'll see.
Yes, yeah, I'm telling you, it's the most interesting time of the year, because it is like that window of at the end of every year where like it feels like a mad race to the end.
Yeah,
like just a mad race to the end of the year where people are trying to fit in all kinds of stuff at the end of the year, because it is near mid-November already. It is November 14th as of this recording. And then this will be up in a few more days, but yeah, it just feels like that mad rush. Like Halloween was
already over,
felt like just the other day, but it was really over. Yeah. You know what I mean? Just the fall is moving into winter, and 2020 is almost over, and 2020's been a hell of a year. I can't remember a year quite like this ever.
And there's also more emphasis on all the bad stuff.
Obviously.
But it's we try to continue to do the things that make us happy, like this podcast.
Right, and we're talking about one of our favorite things, one of our happiest things, and that is, of course, film noir, because it is November, like I said, and it is Noirvember, #Noirvember. I've been using the hashtag for the last 2 weeks or so. I can't believe it's already 2 weeks, but this is a hashtag that was created about 10 years ago by someone I know just from being around the movie internet space, Miss Mariah Gates, who is really well versed in everything film. She worked for Rotten Tomatoes at one point. She worked for TCM. She works for Netflix now. Really an overall wizard when it comes to just movies in general, specifically classic movies. And when it comes to any questions I have about film noir, I just check with her. What is considered a film noir and what's not, because you see some lists out there that will be best film noirs, and some of them on there are not film noirs.
Yeah, they're very borderline at least.
But some are not even close. It's like, no, that's not a film noir. But last year I believe we talked about the classic era of film noir, that 1940 to 1958 era. We did a whole general overview of that. And I think we looked at Out of the Past. Did we do Out of the Past, or In a Lonely Place, or even Gilda?
We did Gilda, but I don't know if it was.
Yeah, all those three movies we've talked about, I think, before, and they're all film noirs. Anyway,
yeah, I mean, the thing is the last time I don't think we went to the straight talking about one movie an episode format until
right
little past that, but now we do that, and we at least get a couple this month of film noir. So,
I've been trying to watch film noir all month long. I don't know about you.
Yeah, I don't have as much time. I'm busy right now, so unfortunately I can't be as enthralled in it as I'd like. But as if you didn't listen to last episode, which you should have, I don't know what the hell you were doing. You heard Andrew picked usually what I say is my favorite movie. He gifted me the L.A. Confidential, which I just love, and it is a film noir. You could say maybe a neo noir, maybe.
Yeah, it's a neo noir. Anything I kind of call anything past 1958, a neo noir,
I,
just as an overall
yeah, I
umbrella
mean,
term.
I think it's
There's all
kind of
noirs.
the thing is the subject matter itself is very original film noir esque, but it is in color, so it
it came out in 1997.
and it came out in 1997.
So.
But is the genre of film noir only is its limitations only given to time movies that came out of that era, or can something still be?
No, that's why you label it something different. That's kind of the way I've always looked at it, the way I've always read it. It's a neo-noir crime film. A lot of crime films tend to be noirs. They seem to go hand in hand, but it's not always exclusive. So, I mean, there's all kind of different genres and subgenres. There's British noir, international noir, American color noir.
I mean, a lot of
there's all kind of stuff.
Where noir came from is actually from the horror genre too. I mean, Nosferatu, the German expressionism.
Yeah, a lot of the stuff from the 20s and 30s influenced film noir. Like you said, German expressionism,
deep shadow,
and even the gangster movies from the 30s.
The crime movies. You get all the deep contrast, the black and white, and
the black and white.
That's usually the classic, style of film noir. Which if you go back to earlier episodes, we talk about how the defining of film noir is more of a style than it is necessarily a genre.
Yeah, it's not quite a genre, but we call it a genre. I don't know. It's the semantics of it. People will argue or debate, if you will, all kind of the semantics of it, and I think that's why it's just safer to have more umbrella terms than specific terms for things, because some people say that the classic film noir era started in the mid to late 30s versus 1940, or perhaps it didn't end quite in 1958. It ended sometime after that. It just all really depends on your perspective and how you want to
some people purely look at it through its style, but I think honestly, more importantly, the thematic stuff is more what I think categorizes film noir. Movies about corruption and femme fatales and are very important to the film noir genre. Females that are twisting the minds of men. Right. And that's not always the case, of course, but
no, I've seen. I mean, we talked about Gilda, and I would say Gilda almost has a male fatale. I don't know if there's a term for that, but it felt like Glenn Ford and I forgot the other man's name. They're almost male versions of the femme fatale, and the victim of the fatale is the Gilda character in Rita Hayworth. But we've went into all
you
that
go back and listen to them episodes, and you'll get a lot of our thoughts there. But so.
But back to LA
Confidential, 1997.
That came out in 1997. It is based off of a 1990 novel by James L. Roy, I believe, and it's directed by Curtis Hanson, who recently passed away. I want to say 2015.
Yeah, it's not too long ago.
I believe he passed away. Not too long ago. He of course is the director of not only this film, but this is probably his most, I would say, acclaimed film.
Yeah.
His best film.
I would say his
perhaps?
best film. I would say it's probably his best movie.
Yeah, I mean, before that, he had done films like Bad Influence, The Hand That Rocks the Cradle. He did Wonder Boys. He did 8 Mile. The Eminem quasi biopic. In Her Shoes, Lucky You, the TV movie Too Big to Fail, based off I believe it was based off a book. And then his last film was Chasing Mavericks in 2012.
A surfing movie.
And
it's the one with...
Is that the one with Gerard Butler?
Yes.
No. Oh, sweet.
Well, this is the way, and this, some people look at this as a derogatory thing. I don't think it is, but he's what I would say we would call a journeyman director. Somebody that kind of you couldn't really put in a box. He kind of does whatever moves him. And he doesn't have necessarily a very distinct style. He can kind of he just can't be fit into any box. So that to
he's a chameleon.
to me that's a compliment. It's nice to have. We all praise the auteurs that have their visions that we all can notice, like our Quentin Tarantinos or Alfred Hitchcock's, or we know their style.
David Fincher.
Yeah, we know their style. We know what to look for when we see it. We're like, oh, that's his movie. But there's also something to say about a director that can do many different genres, and he still makes solid films. Somebody like Sidney Lumet comes to mind.
I was just thinking about him last night. Crazy that you say that, because I was thinking about his last movie, which is definitely a neo-noir. Before the Devil Knows You're Dead. Bleak movie. But he's a director that has done almost everything you can think of. Maybe not something like more fantastical. He's mostly doing, dramas, but he's done dramas, comedies, different scenarios, and is a very, he's done character movies. He's done plot-driven movies. He's somebody that's very broad. I think he's one of the. He's
an all-time great
director for me
definitely.
Personally. Top 10 favorite director or filmmaker for me, just because his like you said, his catalog is so broad, and they're all good.
Yeah, there's
too.
a lot. There are definitely misses, but there's a lot of good stuff, and for so long, like it's like he never lost his touch, like in the sense of like what people would want to see. Like he was making movies from 1950 to
1959,
like because the 12 Angry Men was his first movie.
Is like 1959,
and then all the way up until the mid 2000s. That's.
But even before that, I think he was directing television.
Yeah.
So he had a hell of a career. Yeah, it went all the way from my goodness, from television. 1952 is his first credit on IMDb, all the way up until I believe Before the Devil Knows You're Dead, which is 2007. Yeah. And then he passed away 2011 at the age of 86, I believe. Because I was just looking that up last night, and yeah, great filmmaker. But back to L.A. Confidential.
Curtis Hanson, though not as I would say, not like a overall like impressive filmography. I think he did a few really good ones in there, and to me, L.A. Confidential was like it's one of them things. It's like you get a pass with me. You get a pass with me because this is one of the best movies I think has been made in the last 50 years. Personally,
it's a it came out, like we said. It's also, like I said, critically acclaimed. It was nominated for 9 Academy Awards. Best Picture, Best Supporting Actress, Best Adapted Screenplay, and let me see what else was nominated for: Best Cinematography, Best Art Direction, Best Original Score, Best Film Editing, Best Sound, Best Director. It only won 2 Oscars. It won for Best Supporting Actress with Kim Basinger, and it won Best Adapted Screenplay for Curtis Hanson and Brian Helgeland, they co-wrote the screenplay together. But also, you look at the film now, and you would be like, yeah, no wonder why this movie's so loved. It's got all these stars in it. The thing is, at the time this movie was made, none of these people were really stars. Maybe other than Kim Basinger.
Danny DeVito.
Danny DeVito, say Danny DeVito, but even then, I would always say Danny DeVito is always just a character actor.
Yeah,
in movies.
but he was known.
Yeah.
And like James Cromwell, is not like super known, but like I think he just done the movie Babe right before this, so he was like more in the public eye because that got nominated for Best Picture.
And we do have to mention that Kevin Spacey was in this movie.
And let's get this out of the way.
His career's dead now.
He's crazy. He's not a good person. But I'm looking at this movie for what the art, and it's not.
Yeah, we'll look at it based on his performance.
Yeah, he's very good in this
context
movie.
of the time.
Very good in this movie.
Yeah, and he had just coming off being nominated. Let me see. Yeah, I want to check. Yeah, he got nominated for 7. But I couldn't remember if he had won or not.
I don't think
because I know he won for your second favorite movie of all time, being American Beauty. It's not Steven's second favorite movie of all time. He just doesn't like it. Yeah, he has won 2 Oscars. Yeah, he won. No, he won for The Usual Suspects. That's what he was coming off of. He didn't get nominated for Seven. For some reason, I thought he did. I don't know
it
what
was
I was
good,
thinking.
but I mean, now
Yeah,
I think
because David
Seven
Fincher's
actually
been-
came out. Did the Seven happen like right before this movie? Like it was like a year before.
Let me look. Yeah, because Seven, I think Seven and The Usual Suspects may have came out the same year. I think
96.
that's why.
Yeah.
Okay, let's see. Yeah, Seven. Yeah. Yeah, Seven was 95. Usual Suspects was 95. L.A. Confidential was 97. So yeah, he was coming off of an Oscar win. And what is interesting is just watching the making of behind the scenes is like, I think certain producers or the studio heads or whomever didn't want Kevin Spacey.
Well,
in the
I mean,
role, and then
they didn't.
once-
They wanted, of course, a name. Now, initially,
Right.
he, Curtis Hanson went to Warner Brothers to do the financing, and then they didn't want to do it because at the time, a movie like this was not going to make money. Like, film noir is not was not something that people were pushing,
Well, none of that. Period pieces in general are expensive.
and they're
to
expensive.
make.
Yeah, so
Especially we're talking mid 90s. We're not talking like they have the CGI capability now to kind of assist with the aging and assist with the timing and stuff like that. You look at something like David Fincher's Zodiac, which took place, I want to say the 60s. I can't remember, but like a lot of that was all done with blue screen to make San Francisco look like it was back then. And they just I don't know if they had that tech in the mid-90s. But it was an expensive movie, and they ended up doing it through I think New Regency, which is like a subsidiary of Warner Brothers at the time.
I think they only did it for $15 million.
Yeah, this is a
I mean,
cheap movie. And the movie ended up making like 126 million.
But that was part of the reason they had to get unknowns. I mean, they also wanted the movie to feel more fresh, having unknowns, because they knew if they casted a star that it might not, at the time, feel right. Now you look, like you said, looking at the movie now, you're like, man, this star-studded cast. It's a stacked cast. What the hell?
Stacked.
But
And but lo and behold, after Kevin Spacey had won the Oscar, they were like, okay, yeah, we'll take him. But we also have Russell Crowe, and this is
pre-Gladiator.
Pre-everything.
Yeah, it's pre-Gladiator. Pre
Beautiful Mind.
Well, he had done Insider though, didn't he? Or no,
I think
it was
Insider
right after.
came
It
out
was
the
right
same
after, actually.
year.
Yeah.
Yeah, it came out the same year as that, and in the behind the scenes they mentioned a movie called Romper Stomper, which I've seen Romper Stomper. It's an Australian movie. Young Russell Crowe is in it, playing like a neo-Nazi. He's part of a neo-Nazi group. It's very interesting. But this is like he's coming out of nowhere to be cast in this movie, and he had been in other movies at the time, like. Oh man, none of these movies. I don't think anyone's really.
I've seen. He did a movie where he played a gay man. It's like.
Oh, he was in He was in Sam Raimi's
Quick and the Dead.
The
movie I'm thinking of is like Some of Something.
Yeah, there's the
Some of Us. Yeah, he plays.
Yeah, there's a Some of Us, Love in Limbo, Virtuosity, Rough Magic. That kind
Virtuosity. That's that sci-fi movie where he plays like a robot, isn't it?
Yes, his name is Sid 6.7. I assume that he was a robot.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
Sounds like a robot name to me. But yeah, he was relatively unknown. Guy Pearce. He was. I mean, some people don't even know who Guy Pearce is.
Well,
now,
yeah. I mean, he's kind of like an indie actor.
I love Guy
Pearce. He's kind of stayed for the most part.
He's still an indie actor, in my opinion.
He's good. I mean, like right after this, of course, he would do Memento.
Yes, probably, which is an indie movie.
Yeah.
But he was. Yeah, he's. I mean, his filmography goes on and on. But at the time, in the context of the time, there's nothing here that really sticks out to me.
They were all basically unknown. So
they were all basically unknowns, and like I said, Kim Basinger was, I would say, was well known. She had been
Batman.
in, of course, she had been in Batman, but she was also in
Wayne's World 2.
Wayne's World 2. She was in 9.5 Weeks, The Natural, The Man Who Loved Women. She was in The Getaway. Yeah, she's been.
She was in
She was in Cool World. She was in Cool World.
She was known. She was definitely known.
she was known, but like I said, mostly unknown. And the movie, for some reason, on Wikipedia has a budget of 35 million, which
I thought maybe
still,
that went up.
they said 15 million.
They
in the,
did,
in the,
yeah.
in the thing.
Maybe that's it.
know,
Maybe
so
that didn't
Wikipedia isn't
include
exactly-
the marketing. Yeah,
Could
yeah.
be. Let me. But yeah. So like I said, also Danny DeVito, David Strathairn, who I think is
Oh, he's a great
actor,
character actor, man.
whose name I can never quite pronounce correctly. I don't think Strathairn. But he's an amazing actor who just pops up in
Yeah.
everything. And they always use him in trailers. Like every time he's in a movie, they use him in trailers because his voice is so.
I liked
distinct.
him in A
he's a
League
great
of
actor.
Their Own as the the guy looking, he was the one that was helping him look for the ball players. He was the one that was
Yes.
helping keep the league together after the guy wanted to back out. Like he's just a strong actor. He's really good in everything he's in.
Yeah, he was also. I mean, his most. I don't know most well-known role, but he was in Good Night and
Yeah.
Good Luck, the movie directed by George Clooney, where he played, I believe, he played Edward R. Murrow. That's a great movie that not a lot of people talk about. Good Night and Good Luck, smaller movie, but he has a small part in this movie, but a vital part in this movie. There's a lot of actors in it, and there's a lot of characters in it.
So you have
And I think that's
to
why
you
we're
have
kinda
to be
going
patient
over
with us if we stumble somewhere.
We got to get into
Yeah.
this. Yeah, because this is gonna be not a chore, but it's film noir. There's twists and turns, insides and outs. There's red herrings. There's,
Yeah, so we're gonna do
stuff,
our
but in the end, it all
yeah, we're gonna
crescendos.
do our best to try to give you as much as we can going through the plot, but it is dense. So if we miss something
Yeah.
or we stumble a little bit, we apologize. That's just because we're trying to give you as much as we can, but it's hard to remember every facet that's important.
Right, and also, we're also going to be obviously spoiling everything. Definitely, of all the movies we talked, and I recommend watching all. The
Yeah,
movies
we'll
we've
always
ever
watch
talked
it
about,
before you
but-
listen to
but
us.
Even this one, especially great screenplay
Yeah.
though. So let's go through it. So, we get an opening kind of narration from the Danny DeVito character.
Yes,
right?
it starts off and we get
And-
these like postcards of
yeah.
like California and
Hollywood.
Hollywood showing the beautiful California life, and Danny DeVito's character of Sid, what's his name?
I think it's
Sid Hutchins. That's it. Sid Hutchins is talking about lovely California and how everybody's coming here to live the good life, but then he gets to a point where he starts talking about how, but there's this underbelly.
Maybe it's
there's
not
this
so
seedy
good.
underbelly
Yeah.
that's there of corruption, and that's what his paper is about. Talking about the corruption. Now, his paper is called the Hush Hush Magazine.
Yes, QT.
Quiet on the QT and very hush hush.
Yeah, I know, and it's kind of it's to symbolize a lot of the like tabloid
Yeah.
magazines.
The stuff
at the
we would
time
make
that
fun
are just
of
like,
now, like
just like it's kind of like I don't want to say this now, but like like you see like Access Hollywood or like Entertainment. Well, I forgot what the other one is. Not Entertainment. Isn't Entertainment Tonight?
maybe I don't know.
I don't know. Anywho, just like stuff like that, like rumors and
Gossipy
gossip
stuff.
and,
Yeah.
and all kind of like stuff, because like back in the day that was like a part of a lot of Hollywood was digging up all this dirt on these stars and stuff and what's going on and who's who's in a relationship with who,
which
and
is still
who's
a
getting divorced
thing.
and who's doing the drugs. I mean, tabloid stuff, which still happens
yeah.
today. I mean,
He's
if
like
you're hooked into
he's like the
movie
smaller
world,
version TMZ. I was gonna say
TMZ.
he's like smaller version of TMZ. But so he's explaining all that, and we kind of get an intro that sets up the scenario for the whole movie, where he talks about Mickey Cohen, who's like the drug lord of that area. And basically, they compare him to Jimmy Hoffa in the sense that he gets taken down by tax evasion. Or not Hoffa.
More like Al Capone.
Al Capone. That's what I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Al Capone.
Yeah.
And
because they were both part of the same era.
Yeah.
We're talking about the same era of gangsters, like post-prohibition, pre-World War II, post-World War II. That 30s, 40s, 50s. That era of gangsters where they ran all the rackets. the sports betting and the drugs and the booze and the casinos, lack of a better term, whorehouses. I mean, all those types of things. And Mickey Cohen was, I think his nickname was like the King of Los Angeles at one point because he ran that town, and he went for prison for tax evasion in 1951, I believe, because this movie takes place in 1953.
Yeah.
For those of you who want to put a timestamp on all of this. And so Mickey Cohen gets taken down, and of course that leaves a power vacuum in L.A.
And so really we get that's the kind of the setup in that there's somebody that's trying to take his place. We just don't know who it is yet. But where we get kind of started is we get introduced to Bud White, played by Russell Crowe. And he's hanging out with Dick Stensland, and they are supposed to be on their way to a Christmas party. It's Christmas Eve, so he's outside and he's watching a woman beater, beating his wife inside that. And that's kind of one of the main things about Bud White's character that we learn is that he's got an affinity for helping women in need.
He doesn't like women getting, physically abused by men. And he's just sitting outside of this guy who I think recently got paroled. Like, he was in prison, and then he got out. And, of course,
basically
the next
he's
day or whatever, he's beating his wife.
Yeah, he's basically checking up on this guy,
happened. What's insane to me, this is 1953. This still happens today.
Yeah.
This happens all of the time. Domestic violence is still a huge, huge problem. So what happens is, first of all, his partner's in the back seat getting just plastered drunk. Plastered drunk. And he's but he goes in there, he rips down the Santa Claus and the sled.
Off the roof,
decorations. And the guy comes out, and the guy's like, what are you doing? And then basically he ends up beating the shit out of the guy. And
he's so
he calls the police to come and get him.
Pick on somebody your own size, and then he beats the shit out of him and cuffs him to the railing on the front porch, and then goes to tell him that he'll get out in a little bit, and then if he does this again, he'll frame him for being a child molester. Yes. So that tells you a little bit about his what he's willing. It gives you a setup of what he's willing to do for quote unquote justice. He's willing to do it.
He's a vigilante. He's a vigilante.
Basically, you could say he's almost Batman in a way.
Batman. He's Batman. Russell Crowe is Batman.
When I was watching this movie, it made me think of South Park, the episode where it's Russell Crowe beating up everybody. He's just going around punching people.
Because that was the thing where Russell Crowe would do.
Well, he would specifically
I think
the
there was
media.
Something where
He
Russell
hated the
Crowe,
media, so he would.
Yeah, he beat up. I don't know if he was beating up paparazzi or something. Something happened, and it ended up costing him. They think this is all rumored. I can't even look this up. I'm just making shit up probably. I think it ended up costing him the Oscar win for Gladiator, and instead Denzel got it for Training Day or something like that. I don't know. But either way, I believe Russell Crowe got it the next year for A Beautiful Mind anyway. So who the hell knows? But either way, there was a whole thing where Russell Crowe was going around punching people.
But he does that, and it like I said, gives you an idea of what kind of person he is. He is somebody that does care, but he's also somebody that will maybe has a moral. His moral compass is a little bit skewed to where he's willing to be physical and do things outside the law to make things work. And honestly, just to put it out there, this movie, honestly, watching it again with the climate we're in now, with police in our country, it's very interesting to think about this movie now and about all the different characters, specifically our three main characters, and the complexities of how they look at their job and what they do to get their job done. And so now we go to Jack Vincennes, played by Kevin Spacey, who is at a Hollywood party, basically. He's on the set of the show that he does supervising for, which is Badge of Honor.
Yes. I almost forgot the name. Thank you for remembering.
And so he's on the set, and they're having an after party or something, and he's with this girl, and he's he's having a good time, and one thing that was interesting, I never really noticed it before, but it sounds like he's talking about, like, the girl he's talking to is talking about how he arrested Robert Mitchum, I think. He says Mitchum.
They just named
yeah, like, and I'm like,
left
he's
and
like,
right.
I got to tell you more about that, but before he can, Sid Hutchins shows up.
Yeah, he's dancing with
Yeah,
the
yeah.
woman.
Sid Hutchins shows up, and apparently she knows him because he's written a bad article about her, and so she's mad and she walks away. Now, this is a relationship that gets set up where, Jack and him work together. It's an info exchange. Jack will get good info about potential people to bust, and Sid gets to take photographs and be the first exclusive person to use this stuff. And he gives Jack some money, and it's kind of a under the table thing he's doing that's not really moral.
Yeah, and what I think his character functions at is our connection from the police to Hollywood, because it also shows like the corrupted side in Hollywood as well, because you get the Sid Hutchins character, like I said, who's just digging up dirt on people for his magazine, and it's really interesting. Like you say, just name dropping.
Well, the fact that he's
left and
taking
right.
money to do these busts.
Yeah, he's taking money. Yeah, and then so they're gonna set up a bust, from these two people who are they're doing like there's a lot,
they're doing something very innocent in the sense like they're
it just like what's interesting is, like, I mean, from a modern perspective, marijuana isn't the dangerous drug that it once used to be, but back then people would be busted for marijuana.
Well, the thing is, it's still a problem.
And it was a big deal.
It's still a problem, though. It's still obvious.
It's still illegal in a lot of states, but I mean, like in many states it's legal now, and people use it for medicinal purposes, all this kind of stuff. But like back in the 50s,
it's definitely,
I'm still thinking that reefer madness era where like it's gonna lead to terrible things. You're going to go to hell for doing marijuana.
But the one thing we kind of realize as the story goes on also is that there is a potential that a lot of these scenarios that Sid is getting for Jack are set up by Sid himself. Like he's actually setting up people to then get.
Oh yeah.
Which I don't want to give away things
just for his magazine.
Yeah, I don't want to give away things too early, but there's definitely a suspicion that Sid actually is more involved in these things than it first seems. But so. He tells him, there's this couple, young couple. One of them's an up-and-coming actor that is, getting together, and they're going to smoke reefer. And he tells them where it's going to happen. And basically, they set up this whole thing to do this later in the night. And then after that, we cut to Ed Exley, who is our
Guy Pearce,
and he's the watch commander for the night at the police department. And
and he's straight-laced.
He's the straight-laced. He's got glasses, which they make a couple jokes about how nobody else wears glasses in the department. You should get rid of them. So he's the watch commander that night, and the police department's having a party too, a Christmas party.
Yeah.
And this is where we also get introduced to Dudley, Dudley Smith,
portrayed by James Cromwell.
And
he's the
captain. Yeah. Captain Dudley Smith, and there's news reporters there who are interviewing them and talking to Ed, because Ed's father was also a very kind of somewhat prominent legendary detective who died in the line of duty, and now he's kind of the up and coming. He just got done doing his exams, and apparently he's up for a new promotion. And Dudley kind of looks at Ed as being a political guy who needs to do something more on that end, like internal affairs, or do something where he can use his mind more than go out in the field and use his body, because Dudley looks at doing police work out in the field as something where you have to be morally flexible.
Yeah.
And he doesn't look at Ed as being morally flexible. And he
basically wants Ed to have a desk job.
Yeah, to keep him out of the field and keep him out of the dirty stuff where...
Because he asks him a series of questions like, are you going to plant drugs on somebody who is a drug dealer?
Yeah.
Are you going to beat up somebody who you know is guilty to enact justice because you know they're going to get off? Are you going to shoot somebody in the back because you know their lawyer is going to get them out of prison tomorrow and they're going to go back and do the same crime? And of course, he says no to every question he asks him because he is, like I said, straight laced, more, positively moral, a white knight, if you will. But the promotion he wants is to be a detective.
Yeah,
he wants to be a lieutenant detective.
So he kind of, tells them that, okay, but, I would maybe think about that more because you can't answer yes to them questions. So, but now we cut.
But now we cut to the liquor store.
Yes, we cut to the liquor store. This is where we get introduced to Lynn Bracken, who is played by Kim Basinger.
Kim Basinger.
Bud goes in to get liquor for the party, and she's there, and you get this great kind of, pan around shot to her, and you can't really see her face yet. And then Bud says, he can tell that she's in it. He's curious. He's like, he gets this idea that she's very attractive, and he says Merry Christmas to her, and she turns to the camera, and you get stunning Kim Basinger, and she says Merry Christmas, officer. So she automatically looks at him and says, oh, he's a cop. And he's like
yeah. And he's like, is it
obvious
that obvious?
It's like, yeah, it's basically stamped on your forehead. And, so he gets turned off by that. He feels like that she's not going to like him. So he just gets his liquor and leaves. And so when
she orders a big order of alcohol, and he has his box of alcohol, and he's going back to the car, and then he sees like a fancy car parked, it's not really a limo, it's a fancy car parked, and there's this woman in there who has her nose bandaged, which is, so automatically
hey, look, it's a calling card to Chinatown, it kind of gives you the Chinatown reference.
I guess it is,
but
but it's a calling, but it triggers him, like, hey, this woman perhaps got
beat up,
punched in the face, perhaps she got, whatever, she got attacked, so he's gonna go over and investigate, if you will. But his version of investigation is more like
a shakedown,
roughhousing people.
A real shake. so he goes over and he goes to talk to him, and then the driver, who is an ex-cop named Buzz Meeks, comes out, and Russell Crowe's like, fuck you. He rips his pocket open to get his wallet out.
Yeah, I was gonna say, did you notice that he rips his pocket out? He takes it's like, damn, ruin that guy's jacket. But he's like, yeah, I don't even know who you are, which is interesting foreshadowing.
Yeah.
But he takes it, and then he says, stay there, don't move, and he decides to go in, and he asks the woman, hey, are you okay? And then the man answers, and the man, it's David Strathairn.
Pierce Patchett.
And
Pierce Patchett.
And his name is, what's
Pierce
his name?
Patchett.
Pierce Patchett, PP. And he starts answering for her. He's like, and then Bud's like, yeah, I didn't ask you, buddy, let's see what she says. She's like, and then she says it's not what you think, or something like that.
And then Lynn comes up behind him. It's like, everything's actually, she confirms that it's all good.
Yeah, it's all okay.
And so he kind of backs off, and he takes Buzz's bullets and his gun before he leaves. And
I know, it's like, that probably cost him money.
So then he, leaves them, and they head off, and we get a quick shot of Dick Stensland saying, what's going on? And he says that he remembers Buzz, and that he's like, I think he was a cop, and then he kind of laughs it off, and then they leave. And so then we get to where
we're back at the police station, right?
The next thing we get is where Jack Vincennes is busting the two kids.
Yes, and they're gonna do it to where, like, in the background, there's the movie theater marquee.
Yeah, there's a Hollywood premiere in the background, and they're setting it all up outside. They're
setting it up like how they got a lighting guy there, they got a photographer. So that's how they're gonna light it up to make it look good, and it's like that's what it's about. And he's like, yeah, just don't don't have your guy blast that floodlight in my face.
It gives you this falsity about why they're doing this. It's not about catching somebody doing something bad. It's about the selling of selling stuff.
Yeah, paper headlines. Magazine.
Yeah, so it's not about
it's all about selling, just
selling an image of the cops. And And so he goes in and does it, and it's all, they're about to have sex, and they just fuck that all up. So, so then they bust him and bring him outside and take a picture of him, and then Jack. This is where we get some more little clues here that you don't even know are clues yet until later. But he finds that business card for Fleur-de-lis. What you desire, whatever you desire. And so he takes that card and puts it in his pocket, and this is when we go back to the police station.
Yeah, and that actor who gets busted, he does make a return.
Yeah, he comes back
later
too,
on. I won't want to say anything about that, but that actor's familiar to me, and I can never remember his name. I think it's. Let me look. I got it right here. Simon Baker. That's who that actor is.
What else has he played in?
He was in The Devil Wears Prada.
Oh yeah, he was the rival.
He was in that show, he was in that show, The Mentalist.
Yeah. He was the main character in The Mentalist.
Yeah. That's Simon Baker, but of course, this is a small role.
Oh yeah,
for him. Yeah, he's been in a lot of things. He's a very handsome man, and so that's him. But like I said, he makes a return later on. I just want to point that out because it's always odd to me seeing, people who you would know later on in their careers be in small bit parts in movies. That happens a lot to me.
They go back. Yeah, so they return to you see Bud and Dick return with the liquor to the police station, and then Jack comes in also, and this is where we see him offer Ed some of the money for what he got from the bust he just did that Sid gave him and gave him some money.
Yeah, because he's like, you're the guy on watch tonight. I guess that person always gets.
That's the way he does it. But Ed turns it down. He's like, look, I ain't gonna take your bribes. I'm gonna do it right. I don't have to do it the way you got.
He's straight laced.
Yeah, he's straight laced. He don't give a shit.
Straight as an arrow.
But then right after that, a bunch of commotion happens, and we get a bunch of officers bringing in Hispanic men. And apparently, a couple officers earlier in the night had gotten beaten up by men, and were apparently in the hospital. The story changes between all the officers, but apparently they're home with just bruises and, but you know how it is when somebody hurts, when it comes to the cops, we hear this a lot, when somebody hurts another cop, the other cops are going to, of course, get really upset. And so in this, and of course, because everybody's drinking too, their minds are not right.
That makes things worse.
So they're booking the men that they brought in, and now the word's getting around that they are doing that. So now the party, the guys, Dick Stenzelin's upstairs, and he's at the party, and he hears about it, and they all decide that they're going to do something. So they go down to where they're booking them, and Dick starts beating the shit out of one of the guys and starting commotion, and then Jack Vincennes goes to Bud and tells him, you better go get your partner before he does something stupid. And so then he goes down there and tries to stop him, but then he gets caught up in it, and then he starts beating the shit, and his emotions get the hold of him. So and at the same time, Ed Exley's trying to get in there and stop everything, and Jack Vince,
but he can't. They end up locking him in
they just lock him out of that area.
They lock him in the ISO, the isolation holding cell, I think. And what happens is, while this was all happening, those news reporters came,
they were still hanging around.
They're still hanging around, and they see all this, and they just take a picture of it. It ends up on the front page, and they're just what was it, like a Christmas?
It was Christmas. Bloody Christmas was the headline.
Bloody Christmas, and there's just a massive brawl between the inmates and the police, and it looks bad for the police, and now the attorney general's pissed, the captain's pissed, everybody's pissed.
Yeah, the DA's there, and the captain, and so now we're seeing who's going to get in trouble for this. So the first person that's in the room with them is Bud White, and he of course is going to stick up for his friend and stick up for himself, and he's not going to do anything to incriminate anybody. And they plan on getting rid of him, though.
Yeah, they were like, "Will you testify?" And he says, "No, I'm no snitch. I'm no
Yeah.
rat."
Now, and once again, this
And
is something that is very relevant today when it comes to our own police in today, is that there's a lot of protecting our own, even though what happens is maybe not great,
right.
and then after he leaves, and Dudley Smith is like, look, Dick Stelling's terrible, but Bud White's a valuable officer. We shouldn't get rid of him. And then they bring in Ed Exley, and Ed Exley's, like we said, political. So he's ready. He's already got a plan.
Yeah, he's thinking ahead.
Thinking ahead. So he's like, look, you're wanting to build a new LAPD, so we need to actually not sweep this under a rug, and we get somebody. There's got to be consequences, and
basically you need fall people to make it look like you're actually taking this shit seriously.
Yeah.
So his idea is like, put the blame on the guys whose pensions are already secure and who are going to retire anyway, and have them, and basically they're going to be, removed, and they'll just retire essentially.
And then convict Dick Stenslin and Bud White.
Yeah, because he's a shitty cop.
And of course he doesn't like Bud because Bud's kind of like the opposite of what he believes in. Oh
yeah, and he wants him gone too.
So.
He's like, what does he call him? Like a mindless.
Yeah, he just looks at him as a bully. He's not somebody that really he thinks at all about what he's doing. He just is the muscle, and
he's just a muscle guy.
And so
and James Cromwell says, well, he's the guy who'll say yes to all those questions I asked you.
That was this little hit at him a little bit, But he's like, that's what we should do, and he's like, along with that, I think you should, promote me. I'll testify if you promote me to lieutenant. And he's like, detective lieutenant. he's like, nice. My dad, they said, yeah, but your dad, he didn't get lieutenant until he was 33 and you're 30. It's like, yeah, but when he was also a detective. So I want to do that. And he's like, so they're going to need another person to also testify, also to corroborate his testimony.
Yeah, to corroborate his testimony.
So they bring in Jack. So he nominates Jack because Jack is he wants to keep his place on that TV show as the supervisor. Yeah,
because he loves that. He loves like rubbing elbows with all those like actors and actresses, going to those after parties and stuff. He loves all that stuff. But so they basically have leverage over him.
So they bring him in and tell him that he has to testify, but that he's going to basically be punished for a while he, gets back in their good graces. So, but he has to testify.
Yeah, they're gonna move him from narcotics to
Vice. Yeah.
Vice,
which is basically Vice. Like the on the street guys, that don't necessarily have a, specific, territory of what they're looking into. They look at everything, kind of. But so basically, he gets talked into that, and then you'll be brought back to be put back on the show after a trial period,
stuff.
Basically.
Yeah, basically after this whole basically all this stuff kind of goes away. We'll let you back on the show. So they get him to corroborate. Which is, so basically that's how they're handling the situation. Like Steven said, it's probably brought right out of real life. There's so much, and it's not specifically to law enforcement. This just happens to be that specific group of people. There is corruption and cover-ups like this and maneuvers like this throughout any organization with any type of power on the planet, and it's been going on forever.
It's normal. It's been going on for you want to save face, and in saving face, you hide things and try to do it internally, and instead of making it all public and whatnot.
Yeah, instead of like telling the real truth, which would destroy your
idea of something.
Existence.
Yeah.
Not only that, it would lead to like a reckoning and of just epic proportions. You know what I mean? And this happens all the time, and people do that, and it's wrong. People should. These institutions that do this shit probably need to be heavily reformed. You know what I mean? They probably need this stuff to be brought out into the light to fix the real problems, because then, like, you know, they just keep happening over and over again. And it just gets compounded and worse until it all really explodes, and you get you know, all kinds of stuff happening. But anywho, moving on.
Yeah,
Steven.
so we you know, after a short little talk, you know, Jack and Ed talk about it, and Jack, you know, gets the whole full picture. You know, seeing that Ed was the main guy that was involved in all this to get this to work the way it is, and he's like, you know, are you willing to be hated by everybody, because that's what's going to happen? And he's like, you know, the guys I'm going to rat out are going to be retired in fishing in the next couple weeks, you know, so I'm not worried about me. But you know, you're you know, going against guys that, you know, like Dick, who hasn't even gotten his pension. He's going to miss out on his pension.
Yeah, he's like a year away from his pension.
And Bud, of course, is, you know, who he is. He's a hothead. He's not gonna like this.
Probably want to beat you up.
Yeah, yeah. So he you know, he kind of tells him that, and then we cut to a restaurant or a bar of some type, and Dudley's waiting for Bud White to show up, and this is where he lets him know that he's retired, and that all the people that were gonna go against him have decided not to, and so now he wants him to come back and work in homicide, and he's going to be working strictly with Dudley on some special stuff, where his
off the books,
kind of off the books, special things that really suit his strengths, which is basically being a muscle guy, and
aggressive interrogation tactics.
And so you can tell Bud, though excited to still be a cop, is not liking that he's being put in a box. He liked the idea at first that he was going to be working in homicide, working cases, because he wants to, you know, expand as a officer. But now he's realizing that, you know, he's only going to be used for muscle primarily. So then we cut away. We get I like the end of the kind of the end note on that scene where he's do you understand what your job's going to be? And he says in Technicolor, which is a nice little, you know,
likes the nod to
the times of, you know, Technicolor film. And so I thought that was pretty cool. Instead of something like Crystal Clear, or, you know, he says in Technicolor, sir. That's it, you know. So
very vivid.
So then we I think we get a quick scene of more of Mickey Cohen's people getting murdered. Like there's like other lieutenants of his that have tried to take his spot, but then now two gunmen are going around and killing all the rest of the lieutenants.
Yeah, just mowing people.
Yeah, there's
down.
a scene where they're like inside in a house, and two guys shoot across the way through like over a pole, and it like cuts the glass in half.
They come out of the bushes basically, and they grab a briefcase full of heroin.
Our favorite drug. And but it's, you know, and at the same time you're getting Sid Hudgens is still doing like a voiceover, you know, he's writing in his paper about all
he's tapping away at his typewriter.
And
he always ends it like hush hush and QT.
Yeah, and he talks about how the captains set up a kind of a task force to get rid of crime coming from out of state. You know, there's a lot of criminals that are coming from other parts of the country that are trying to fill a spot too, not just people within Mickey Cohen's people, like racket. You know, there's people coming from New York and New Jersey trying to come in, and he's using his task force to stop them and then kick them out, basically.
And this is where, isn't this? I know we get a couple of.
Well, we get an intro to the Victory Motel here, and you see him beating up one guy.
And he's like, this is the he has a.
Well, he's got tons of great lines in this movie, but
James Cromwell. I almost said Jim's Cromwell.
Jim and James, not Jimmy.
Yeah, but he says, like go back to Cleveland. This is the city of angels.
Yeah, I think it's later on in the movie. He says something like that. He's like, "You're not from this city. This is for the city of angels, and you don't have wings," or something like that. He has a lot of great lines in the movie, specifically later on when we get to it. But but yeah, so you get that montage, and then it cuts to Jack, who is coming back for his first day on Vice, and he gets, like, they're looking at assignments, and he gets an assignment that has to do with pornography.
Pornography. Yeah, and they're just handing around, like, evidence,
yeah,
I guess, just, like, different pornographic pictures.
And he notices a symbol on one of the pieces of evidence that matches the one on his, card that he got earlier. The fleur-de-lis symbol. And so, he thinks maybe it's connected, and so he tries to call the number on there, and the other end, the woman on the other end doesn't believe that he, is somebody that's a customer, so she hangs up on him.
Right.
And he tries to get a redirect and can't find it. Nothing's on the other end. So, then we go to where Stensland is getting his final, I guess, he's finally getting laid off. And so he has to turn in his gun and badge, and then Bud meets him and takes him to his car, and he says he'll go out with him for beer, but he's like, no, I got a date tonight. And and he's like,
and then he goes like, yeah, who, like, oh yeah, so, like, who did you arrest or something like that?
Yeah, just normal joking guy talking, and
right,
so
right,
he's like, I'll talk to you later, and so he leaves him, and then we go to Ed Exley, who's kind of by himself. He's like the last one in the office. He tries to make some nice gestures to a couple other detectives, but they don't like him. Nobody likes him.
No, nobody likes him.
So he's sitting there by himself, and then they get a call in that there's a homicide, and so he at the Night Owl
at the Night Owl Cafe.
So he's the first one he's not the first one in the scene. Another cop's there, but he's the first one to go in, and then we get this very suspenseful kind of scene where you're getting the first person
looking around
account of him walking through the cafe, and the cafe cook or whoever is shot and he's dead. And
there's a blood trail from like a seat all the way to the back, and then he opens up the doors and there's just a series of dead bodies all over.
Yeah,
the floor.
in the men's bathroom. There's at least like 5 or 6, I think, people dead there, and so then James Cromwell, Captain Smith, shows up, kind of takes over. He's like, Ed's like, nah, I'm here. I'm the lead on this. He's like, look, I'm the lead. You don't want it, Ed. I'm the lead on this.
You can be my second.
You'll be my second in command. And so they both get pictures taken and stuff, and they kind of then walk through the crime scene. And what they kind of figure out is that it seems that there's 3 gunmen, is what the conclusion they come to.
Yeah, 3 gunmen with shotgun shells. Yeah. They were all like, all the people there were like executed. There's 2 women. The 2 women victims. One of them, we come to learn, is the woman who was in the car that
with the nose with
the bandage on the nose, and her name was Susan Lefferts, and she was one. And so basically, when Bud finds out about Stensland, he goes to the morgue, and he's looking for his ex-partner now, his dead body. Uncovers it. And then you get a scene, I believe. I mean, I'm kind of jumping around here.
No, you're good. You're good.
You can put me straight. Good. Is that Susan Lefferts' mother is there to identify her, but she doesn't recognize her quite as much. She says like there is a birthmark, I believe, on her left hip, and once she sees that, that's her daughter.
Now, of course, we don't realize that girl was the same girl that was in that car until Bud
recognizes her,
sees her and recognizes her and says, "Oh, I remember her." And then so there's like a birthmark on her leg, and that's how they identify her, because she doesn't have the nose. She didn't have the bandages on her nose anymore. So
no.
So she obviously. Well, we find out here in a little bit why she had bandages.
Yeah, then Bud goes to see.
Well, this is
that patch.
Yeah,
patch. Yeah, guy.
We Well, before that, there's like a big meeting with the captain and stuff that they talk about, like they're gonna split up into 48 2-man teams, and we're gonna find the guys, and it gives them all the information about the 3 gunmen, and that the only lead that they have is that there was 3 black men shooting off shotguns in like in a park nearby.
Yeah, and they identified the car as well.
Yeah. So that all happens, and they all split off, and then Jack has kind of a lead that him and Ed decide to go off. Ed decides to join them, and then Bud also goes off on his thing. He decides to go off by himself.
There's a lot of plot lines happening simultaneously in this movie that you really have to keep track of, because there are so many characters. There are essentially 3 lead characters for a good portion of this movie. And so, each of them, their plot lines are going off on separate tracks, but they're also intersecting with one another. It's a balancing act, and I think Chris Hansen really does pretty well. Yeah. But you have to be engaged while watching the movie to really keep up with it.
It took me a few viewings before I picked up on all the threads and how things connected, and where the little red herrings and things that would pop up again later. It takes some watching, but so then this is when Bud tracks down Pierce Patchett, and he's at it. He goes to his house, and he's out there like hitting golf balls or something, and
nice house like overlooking the Hollywood Hills. So this dude's got money. So basically he talks to him, and then his bodyguard comes out, but it's not Buzz Meeks. It's a different guy. And then I think Bud remarks, what happened to the other guy? And he's like, oh, he no longer works.
Yeah, so he kind of brushes it off.
Oh, okay, kind of brushes it off there. But basically, they start talking about, what Pierce Pratchett does, what racket he is.
Yeah, he basically says, hey, do we care about finding out? Do we care about anything that's like residual?
Peripheral. Yeah, he says peripheral to your investigation. Yeah. Basically, he's asking him, I'm going to tell you some stuff, but am I going to get in trouble for it? Or is this just, between you and I?
Can I tell you something that might relate to what you're looking for, but that I don't want to get in trouble for? So he mentions that that he has a business where he, makes women look like movie stars. And
he runs
an escort service, basically.
An escort service, prostitution, where he has women, partake in plastic surgery to look like movie stars. Some of them, yeah. And Susan was made up to look like Rita Hayworth. Yeah. That's why her mother couldn't tell because her hair was red and she had
the nose
plastic
job
surgery done to her face. Yeah, and that that connects directly back to why she had a bandage on her face when she was sitting in the car, because she probably just had plastic surgery. And apparently there's quite a lot of money to be made in that racket. And so basically he lists off a bunch of like I said, name dropping. Like, I had an Ava Gardner, I had a Russell, I had Marilyn Monroe, and he just names off a bunch of names, and I needed a Rita Hayworth, so that's where Susan came in. And basically, I think he says, like, I don't know if it was him that said it, but basically, unfortunately, like, when people head west or go to Hollywood or Los Angeles, with these big ideas and big dreams, they can sometimes fall into these, less than reputable situations.
Oh yeah,
and end up doing things that they probably never thought they would do.
Yeah, and that happens with other characters as well. Yes. But then this leads him to track down Lynn Bracken, who is his.
I was waiting for
this. This is his Veronica Lake.
That's his Veronica Lake lookalike, and coincidentally, we are recording this podcast on Veronica Lake's birthday of November 14th. Yeah. We didn't do it on purpose. It just happened to be that way. And for those of and Veronica Lake, for me, is one of my favorites. And she was an actress who was in several movies that I love. Specifically, Sullivan's Travels, The Blue Dahlia, This Gun for Hire, I Married a Witch. Yeah, and there's always that Veronica Lake hairstyle that so many people have
Yeah.
mimicked over the years and forever. I mean, Jessica Rabbit in Roger Rabbit had the Veronica
Yeah,
Lake
yeah.
hairstyle and it acted like Veronica Lake. You know what I mean? Like that's how iconic her image and her I would say her image and how she acted was, and it's that that hair like just slightly over the
Yeah.
eye, the right
Yeah.
eye, and just with the curls at the end, the long flowing locks. And that's the Veronica Lake look. And Kim Basinger is made up to look like Veronica Lake with the blonde hair and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. So and Bud is kind of fixated on her.
Yeah, he goes to see her for the first time, and when she's there, we start with her
with a customer.
She's with a customer who ends up being a congressman apparently,
and they're watching a Veronica Lake movie.
Yeah,
And I'm not sure what they were watching. It could be the Blue Dahlia, it could be This Gun for Hire. I mean, I know that Alan Ladd was in it because I saw him on the screen, and they were in a few movies together. But the guys but what is interesting is it's a fantasy.
oh yeah,
thing.
yeah.
These guys even pretend like they're with Veronica Lake in these movie situations or whatnot, and they act all like Alan Ladd or somebody, and they like these tough guys with like the tank tops and sounding all rough and tough, and it's really really interesting.
Yes,
and it's gonna go down in not a weird avenue here, but we're all adults here, but like pornography and all that kind of stuff is mostly based in the realm of fantasy. And dream fulfilling and all that kind of stuff. And it's really interesting to see that connection in this movie with real life people turned into movie stars. There's a whole, racket of pornographic parodies of like famous movies and TVs and all this kind of stuff. And it's just really, interesting to see that contemporary thing in this movie in reality. It's real and basically Bud White walks in on this and basically tells the guy to hit the road, and the guy thinks it's like part of the act, and he tries to say like, hey, you want me to get rid of him for you? And then Bud White's like, LAPD, just get out of here before I beat the heck out of him.
Before I call your wife, because he knows he's the congressman.
Really interesting, really interesting, and he's like, it's like. And that a lot of that happens today, where people, cheat on their spouse and whatnot. But anywho, Steven, take it away.
Well, yeah, he goes in to question Lynn, and he's very hostile. Very hostile. He's already prejudged her. He basically he calls her a whore, and keeps saying how he's probably fucked like 50 guys today. She even mentions that he says fuck a lot.
He does. And he does. He's a very crude man.
He starts to realize that she's a little more engaging than he expected, and a lot smarter than I think he expected. And so, he gets a little information from her about a little bit about Pierce and about what he, not enough, of course, to get him in trouble, but just a little bit of information. And by the end of it, he kind of says, can I see you again? And she's like, are we talking about...
Yeah, as a customer or as a date?
And he decides he doesn't really... He kind of goes back on it, and he's like, you know what? It was a mistake to even say anything. Never mind. And so then he kind of leaves her there. And then now we shoot back to Jack Vincennes and Ed Exley, who are now going to talk to this guy who's a boxer, whose brother is in prison. And he has info, possibly on the gunman, the black gunman, and so they go to see him, and they promise him that they can get time off of his brother's sentence, which they obviously are just playing him.
They play this poor kid, and so your brother's there. He says he's there till 1970, and then Jack says, how would you like him there till 1960? Yeah. I know
the DA and.
The DA and I'm friends with lawyers and stuff, and all. Basically they lie to him just to get information. And So they find out the location of these three people just because the kid's like, yeah, I don't. These guys are assholes anyway. So I'm just basically fuck these guys and just like, yeah, all right, and then, all right. So they go over there, and they have their guns out, and then what's Exley goes off. Didn't he forget his glasses or something?
Yeah, he's.
And then Jack goes like, just don't shoot me.
Yeah.
So they're slowly creeping in, guns drawn, and then they walk in, and there's people already. There's police officers already there.
Two other characters that are kind of like they're not really. I mean, they're definitely important to the story, but they're kind of in the background. Two other cops that are kind of around are already there, and they found the 3 shotguns in the.
Yeah, 3 shotguns are in the backseat of this car. Here's the car that we've been looking for, and there are the shotguns. Just coincidentally. Out there in the open for everyone to see the murder weapons. Oh, boy. How easy is this? So, anywho, they're going to go in and, arrest these cats or whatever. So they go in there, and those other 2 cops, they're going in guns blazing.
Well, the 2 guys that were already there do.
Yeah, the 2 guys that's what I meant. The 2 guys that were already there do, like, this guy's about to shoot off a shotgun at one of them, and then Exley, knocks the shotgun up. He's like, no, we need to question these people. So they arrest these 3 guys, and they bring them in for questioning.
And this is where Exley gets to really show off.
Exley's like kind of proven that he's not the weak cop that I think that the others thought he was.
Well, I mean.
And he kind of manipulates the situation to basically have the people tell on each other.
Yeah, I mean, he shows that that being a good cop isn't just about being able to get out and be physical and dirty and
beat people up.
I mean, there's the other side of it.
There's a way to mentally manipulate people to get what you want.
So he goes in and talks to the first guy who's kind of like the leader of the group, you could say, and kind of manipulates him into giving up something about one of the other guys, and then, which in turn makes them give up something. So basically, by the end of it, but by the end of it, things starts to realize
different.
That maybe the guys that
they're not talking about what we want them to talk
about.
They're talking about something else.
They talk about like the one kid who's really upset. He pisses himself. He talks about how they had a girl and that he was a virgin, so then they got this girl and they had sex just to have sex with her, and then he's like, what girl? And then they goes to the third guy.
What are you talking about? Yeah.
And then he says something about the girl, and they think that she's still alive, and so there's somebody out there still that they don't know if she's connected with the Night Owl or not. That's still out there, so he focuses on that, and of course at the same time Bud White's out there, foaming at the mouth.
And
he breaks the front of a chair off with his hands, and runs in.
And he runs in, grabs the guy, and basically starts playing Russian roulette.
Yeah, 1 in 6 chance. He's like, 1 in 6 chance, and just starts.
Yeah, and he goes click, click, right in the guy's mouth, and the guy goes, okay, it's at such and such address, and they go there, and there's this terrible scene. And there's this woman tied to a bed, and I mean, obviously the assumption of what has happened, she's probably been repeatedly sexually assaulted and raped multiple times. So so Bud White is the one that goes in.
Yeah, he goes in by himself
Yeah.
ahead of everybody else.
By himself. And probably not the best guy to let in there if you want information, because this guy's going to go in there and he does what we all assume that he was going to do, and he shoots the guy who's sitting there watching TV, and then he plants a gun on him and something to make it look like the guy shot at him first instead of him just shooting at the guy, because it looks bad. And so they rescue that woman, and then he's in there and she's being wheeled into the ambulance, and Exley's trying to ask her questions. And Bud's like, what are you doing, you idiot? Can you stop doing your job for 1 second?
Yeah, because that's the thing is though Ed, there's a lot of things about how Ed does his job that are definitely more moral. He also kind of goes about the job in almost a robotic way, where the emotion, the empathy for everything is kind of not there.
Right. He doesn't. The awareness of the situation is kind of not there, and the information that he wants is like, when did these men leave you here? Because he wants to know, like, what did they have enough time to then go over to the Night Owl
I think it was a
cafe to commit those murders? And basically, she says, I think we come to find out that she says like midnight, but we'll get into that a little bit later. But so what happens?
There's a little bit. There's a little bit of a scuffle between Bud and they get in each other's face a little bit.
Yeah, and they separate the two. And basically, what happens is we hear like over the police radio that the three suspects have quote unquote escaped. Don't ask me how. They never really explained.
Well, they said they jumped from the windows in the holding cell.
Yeah, they said they jumped from the window, which was on like the second floor. And I'm like, all right, that sounds a little fishy to me. But basically what happened is like during the interrogation is that one of them said where they got like their drugs from, and so they go over to that address, and of course they're there, and they go in, and
this is a pretty
situation turns into a shootout.
Pretty intense scene too. They go in and nobody's shot at first, but then like a beer bottle gets knocked off a table and it sets the one officer off, and he shoots the one guy, and then the drug dealer guy shoots the one cop, and then Ed ends up taking out basically everybody else. And then there's a great shot where he is running down a hallway after the last guy, and the guy gets in the elevator, and before the door can close, he sticks his shotgun in and shoots in, and then we see just his face with the door opening, and you don't see what happened, but you know that the guy's dead. I mean, it's done. And
yes, you do. And then
now this, of course, this action, this thing that he's not known for doing, has now made him popular with the rest of the cops. That he's willing to go out there and use force.
We basically get a montage now of like, oh, he's the big hero. He gets like the medal, he gets like a medal and like all kind of stuff, and everybody's like, the Night Owl case is solved and everything's all hunky dory.
And with that, Jack gets to go back to the set.
Jack goes back to the set, and the relationship between Bud White and Lynn Bracken is going well, he comes back and sees her again, and actually finally comes to see her, and she's like, I was wondering when you'd come back, and so she actually takes him into her own real room, not the sex room. Like she has her own bedroom that's like her. Oh yeah, and she starts she starts peeling back the walls of her personal life, and they start opening up to one another. A lot of good character stuff happening there. A lot of good relationship stuff, like real stuff happening there.
And then we go back to the set with Jack, who it's his first time back, and he talks with he's Sid Hudgens. Danny DeVito shows up, and he has this new thing he wants to do. With this is where this character comes back from earlier. The kids he busted at the beginning of the film. The one guy played by Simon Baker was his name.
Yes.
He's back in the picture. And they want to use him to basically set up the DA, who is apparently a closeted homosexual.
They basically want to use it as
blackmail and get pictures of him in the hotel with him. So they're warming Simon Baker's character up to go over and talk to him. And during the conversation Kevin Spacey has with him, he mentions the Pierce Patchett and Fleur-de-Lis, and and he kind of says how he's kind of scared of Pierce Patchett, and so he gets a little bit of a info on that, and Kevin Spacey kind of helps Danny DeVito, but you can tell he's a little bit like shaken by it. He finds it to be a little bit off, and so
he has a conscience.
Yeah, so it's like the time he took off, he suddenly has got a little bit more perspective versus he's stepping back from everything. So then we get that scene with Kevin Spacey and Ed Exley, and Ed's having doubts about the case because he doesn't know that because remember he wheels the girl out of the hospital.
Oh yeah, yeah. He goes and gets her at the hospital,
and the news reporters are there, and she starts to talk,
and he asks her, and she's like, "Oh yeah, I think so." And he's like, "You think so?" She's like, "Yeah, I mean, if I didn't say that, like, no one would care, if I, another woman was, tied up and raped by whoever,
a Mexican
no one would
woman."
care. Yeah, she does specifically say her race, and then so basically it leads Jack to believe, like, okay, her testimony or what she said isn't exactly accurate, so that means perhaps that didn't happen. But we come to find out that that the reason why it's such a shut case is because they've got the bullets match up, and for the guns and everything matches up, but for him it just doesn't seem
something's
right.
off about it. It's a little too tidy, and so then there's this great scene with Jack and Ed where they kind of talk about why they became cops, and Ed he brings up stuff about his dad and about how his dad was killed in the line of duty, and the reason he became a cop was because of Rollo Tomasi. And Rollo Tomasi is the man who killed his father, but not really. It's not that they never caught the person that killed his father.
Yeah, so it's just like
it's a name he came up with
for nobody, for like a ghost.
Basically, as they say later in the movie, the guy that gets away with it. It's the name for the guy that gets away with it, and so he brings that up to Jack, and then he asks Jack why he became a cop, and he's like, I don't remember. So he's got a lot of weight on him, and then he tells him, he's like, look, I think we did skip ahead a little bit though. He does go back to the hotel first. Sorry.
He does go back to the hotel because then they team up after.
Yeah. It's before this scene, he does go back to the hotel and he finds
because he wants to go. He basically wants to go there early to tell the kid, like, hey, you don't have to do this. Get out of here. Basically, he wants to save the kid, but he gets there and he's dead.
Yeah, his throat's been cut, and so he doesn't. He just basically gets swept under the rug. And then they get to this. They get to the hospital scene, and then they get to this scene, and Jack says, if you work with me on this case that I have, then I'll help you with your case, because Ed wants Bud White tailed, because he's noticed that Bud's been kind of like hanging around some of the stuff that he's been working on, and I think maybe there was even another scene before this. I think Bud White goes to see the Leffords' mom, Susan Leffords' mom again, and this is when you find Buzz Meeks under the house.
Oh yeah, he goes to the house, and this poor lady really is oblivious to what was going on around at her own home, and he goes to like this back room, and he starts smelling something foul, and then he goes and looks under the house in like a cellar.
Yeah.
And down there is a corpse. It's a dead body, and he checks to see if there's an ID, and it's Buzz Meeks. And now we know what happened to him.
So then after that, Ed
he's gone.
Yeah,
he's dead.
Then Ed kind of follows behind him and discovers the things he found, and so now he thinks maybe Bud has got more to do with what's going on, maybe, or something. But more or less, he's got kind of somewhat of a rivalry with him, so he's also competing with him somewhat. Like it's kind of weird, but at the same time, I think this is when him and Jack find out that he's seeing Lynn Bracken. They go and they spy on him, and he's met up with Lynn at her place, and they're like, well, maybe he's not as dumb as we thought.
Not only that, but they also think that he's involved with Pratchett.
Possibly, yeah.
Because he's with Patchett. I keep saying Pratchett as if it's Terry Pratchett, the author, but it's the Patchett, and because he's seeing, he's seeing that woman. So is he a client? Is
Yeah.
he,
Is he like muscle?
What,
is he
what
muscle for Pierce Patchett?
Yeah. What is he? Is he a client? Is he being manipulated by her? That question comes up later on, and basically this leads them to they split.
Well, they
I
go
believe,
see
at this
Pierce
point.
Patchett.
Do they?
Yeah, they go see Pierce Patchett, and they question him. That was probably before that scene, because they ask him about Bud White and how they're why that she would be seeing him, and he's like, why did women see men?
No, that's after that. Yeah, I think that's later because that's when he calls up. Remember, David Strathair and Patchett. He makes a phone call after he leaves, and that's when Exley and her get together.
Okay,
and that's where you see Sid Hutchins outside the window taking
the other
pictures,
thing we also is like right after that one scene was that they go to try to see.
They go see Johnny Stompanato.
Yeah, Russell Crowe had already went and seen him.
Had already seen him.
And had kind of gotten some information from him,
who was Mickey Cohen's ex-bodyguard, for people trying to keep track of this, who says Meeks was, and that's when we learned that Meeks was trying to sell heroin.
Yeah.
A stash of heroin.
And that's probably what got him killed,
What is interesting is that, it's like they're following in the footsteps of Bud White, and they're just like a few steps behind him, finding out information that he already knows. And it's like, and that's how they find that out.
And so they go to try to.
This is the scene. Is this the scene with Lana Turner?
Yes.
This is the scene. This scene is hilarious because Exley thinks that the woman that Stompanato is with is like just a prostitute made up to look like Lana Turner. And he insults the heck out of her, and then Jack goes, "That's Lana Turner." And he goes, "What? Yeah, that's Lana Turner."
Yeah, and then he gets a drink thrown in his face. Yeah,
he gets a drink thrown in his face, and it's a funny scene. It's
yeah,
really
they both
funny.
go back to the car and they both laugh about it.
And this is when they split up.
Yeah.
This is when they split up, and he goes, and then
then they go see Bud White, and then they split up and say, I'm gonna stay and look. Exley says he's gonna stay and look and go see Lynn Bracken, and then he's gonna go and look into the autopsy on the body they found.
Yes, because they called
because they don't have the ID on Buzz Meeks. They just found the body because Bud took the ID. So he goes to look at the coroner report, finding out who it is, and this is when Ed goes to see Lynn.
And then Jack goes to do some investigation into Buzz Meeks.
His past arrest records and things like that.
Yeah, it goes to see his past records and whatnot. And I believe simultaneously
Ed goes to...
I think it's quasi-simultaneously. Ed goes to see Lynn Bracken, and then Jack goes and does his investigation. And what happens is Ed ends up talking with Lynn Bracken and ends up sleeping with her.
Well, yeah, she basically pushes him towards it. Like she builds up Bud, and she knows that he's kind of like obsessed with being better than him. And
right. He wants to be him.
He wants to be him, but wants to do it his own way. I don't know, but it's more or less he's jealous of him, and also, of course, he's very attracted to her, I'm assuming, and so he decides the only way to beat him at his own is to beat him at his own game, and he has sex with her to get at him. I don't know. It's one of them things that's somewhat confusing.
She has an interesting line, where Steven, you know it. I'm paraphrasing it here. Where basically, like, before they're about to, get it on, if you will, because we know whatever the terminology anyone wants to use, but she's like, being with me is not like being with him.
She literally says fucking me isn't like fucking him,
Well, I tried to clean. I tried to make it a little less obvious,
you
but
can
okay.
be clean. I'll be unfiltered.
I guess we are. Yeah, it's a direct quote. So
and
that is an interesting line to me because is he trying to be Bud White, or is he trying to? Is he attracted to Bud White?
I think he's trying,
because there's been no real homosexual undertones or anything like that up until this point.
Yeah.
Unless I missed them all, which I probably could have.
I think what she means is just he's trying to figure him out, and but he's also trying to bring him down, and that he thinks that he can maybe get more in his mindset or in his shoes by having sex with her. I don't know. It's one of them things that's never been clear to me. Is one of the most unclear things to me was that situation, but really what this ends up being is a setup.
The long and short of it is that it's just a setup by
Patchett and somebody else that hasn't been revealed yet.
We haven't been revealed
which is
yet.
the next scene.
So Jack goes to see James Cromwell Smith, Dudley Smith, and basically, ask him about Buzz Meeks, and because there was Dudley, Stencil, and Buzz Meeks were all like Stencil. What am I saying? Yeah, Stencil.
Stencil's what you write. You use to write letters.
Yeah, where you copy stuff. Yeah, so they were all like cops at the same time.
Yeah, he was
noticed that
he was their boss.
He noticed he noticed the signatures on all of these like arrest reports and stuff like that they're all connected to one another. So he goes to ask him about it, and
it's great.
Steve, you want to reveal it?
So he's they're talking. He's giving Jack some coffee or tea or whatever it is, and then in a big twist surprise, he pulls a gun on him and shoots him in the chest.
Question I have is, where did he get the gun from?
I guess he just
carry a gun around this
maybe
whole
it was in his underwear. I guess I don't know.
Yeah, he's just wearing a robe and underwear and a shirt. I mean, I don't know where you put that gun. That wouldn't be noticed. But anywho, he shoots Jack, and the last thing Jack says is Rollo Tomasi.
Yeah, and then kind of smirks at him and then dies. And one of the other great lines, there's a couple, he says, I think he says in that scene, this is the scene where he says, stop trying to do the right thing, boyo, you haven't had the practice. It's one of the great lines.
Yeah, I wanted to bring this up. Glad this actually reminds you. One, he says boyo.
He says boyo, which is because he's playing an Irish.
Yes, and I'm like, sometimes his Irish accent goes in and out.
Yeah,
and sometimes it's just James Cromwell acting like James Cromwell, and then sometimes he has a slight Irish accent twinge, and then it was weird.
I guess it makes sense since he lives in America. Maybe some of that accent would. Yeah.
There's this old idea that a lot of cops from that era were Irish, and that's why. But it's a whole like cultural thing. But anyway, I just found that odd that like he's trying to be an Irish cop, but he doesn't really quite have the accent, or it goes in and out. But basically, what happens after that is, he has this whole big conference where he's like, we're gonna find these people, we're gonna find whoever did this to Jack, and I want teams out there combing the neighborhoods, and we found his body in a park, but it looks like his body was moved. Basically, it's a whole big bullshit lie nonsense stuff. But what happens after that is
the key element at the end of this scene is that James Cromwell gives himself away.
Yes,
and it's almost like Jack Vincennes did it on purpose, and that's why he smiled at the end. So he asked Dudley asks Ed about if Jack had mentioned anything about a Rollo Tomasi, is somebody they were looking into, and he's like, and you could see the change on his face, like, I only told that to one person. I only told that.
Yeah, the only person who would know that is Jack. And if Jack told him,
he was the last one to see him.
Jack must have seen him. Like, Jack must have talked to him, and he didn't say anything about that during this press conference.
Yeah. And the fact that he asked him about it, because if he knew the context of Rollo Tomasi, he would know what it meant.
And he wouldn't have asked him about it,
so he knows that it was given up as like almost basically like a a red
like
flag.
a calling card.
A red flag.
Yeah, like a red flag, like an alarm system.
Yeah, yeah.
Woo, woo, woo.
So
Like a siren. And then I think this is, and then I believe this transitions to, the scene where they're interrogating Sid Hutchins, right?
Yeah.
Or did I skip a slide?
I think so. So Bud.
Because I'm just yeah.
So Bud.
Because this is where Bud White finds out about Lynn and Exley.
Well, Bud's.
That's the scene I was going to go to. But unless there's something in between.
Bud's talking about he's talking to one guy about who would take the drugs. Like he's talking to another detective about drugs and about who would be able to distribute it. Because when he was talking to about how about how Buzz Meeks had the drugs and him having them drugs got him killed. Like who would they go to distribute the drugs? And he says Mickey Cohen. And so then he walks away and Dudley calls him into the office and kind of says, hey, you've been unfocused lately. Like, I need you to get back in the game. I need you to meet me out, later, whatever. So
at that motel,
yeah,
right?
At Victory Motel. So then we cut to it later, and we see Sid Hutchins, who's been cut up, tied up, handcuffed to the chair, and so now they're questioning him about what his play.
What does he do? Yeah,
and so.
First of all, it's raining outside because it's always raining. In certain film noirs, it's always raining.
It's in a place where there's not a lot of rain. But
also, we didn't mention that Jerry Goldsmith does the score for this movie, and it's a very good score. And yeah, Jerry Goldsmith is an all-time composer. So that was very interesting, just because there's a lot of film noir homages to this movie, like classic film noir homages, specifically within the music. I noticed, a lot of saxophone and stuff like that. But yeah, this scene, they're basically investigating him, they're hitting him, they're knocking him around to the point where he gives up, saying, I take pictures, for blackmail pictures. I got them in my trunk underneath the mat or something.
Yeah, of a cop who's having sex with somebody.
Yeah, cops
and
having
I think
sex
he thinks
with,
it's him at first.
Who's dressed up to look like Veronica Lake.
And I think he thinks it's him at first. Like he thinks it's himself. Bud does.
Or does he specifically?
Because what he doesn't know about Ed.
Mention Exley,
he doesn't know that Ed Exley went to see Lynn at all. So he probably.
Who was Sid Hutchins?
No, I'm saying Bud White thinks. When Sid Hutchins brings up the fact that he has pictures of a cop having sex with a Veronica Lake lookalike, he probably thinks that it's him that's in the pictures. Bud White because he doesn't know Ed went to see him.
Yeah, but Sid knows.
But Sid knows. But what I'm saying is, from Bud's,
he got the phone call. He works for.
Yeah. But I'm saying Bud White runs to the car to get the pictures because he probably thinks it's him. He wants to get rid of the evidence. But when he goes to look at him, he sees that it's Ed.
Yeah, and he freaks out. Freaks out. He's devastated, and he's in the rain, looking at the pictures. They're getting all wet. He's dropping them in the water, and just destroying those pictures. So then
he drives off, and Dudley's like, I wouldn't want to be Ed Exley for all the whiskey in Ireland.
Yeah, I know. There's an Irish reference.
But then we cut back and we realized that whole thing was set up.
Was a setup. It was a setup.
Dudley wanted to make.
Sid's like, hey, it worked. Get me out of here.
Basically, they wanted to get Bud mad enough to go take care of Ed Exley out. So
to get him out of the way. Yeah, do their dirty work.
But then we realized that now Sid Hutchins is also expendable, and so now.
Oh yeah, no witnesses.
So now Dudley takes him out.
Got to clean up. Got to clean that.
And of course, he does another great line. He covers his mouth and says, "Hush, hush."
I know.
He has all the lines in the movie.
There goes.
He's got this ironic line. That was a funny, ironic one for his catalog of lines in the movie. So then we cut back and Bud is showing up to Lynn Bracken's house and it's raining and it's all dramatic. Lynn's out there and
can't rain every day.
He says, did you meet up with Ed Exley? And she's like, yeah, and then so
she tries to say it like they just talk.
Yeah, she tries to cover it up, but then he says, "You fucked him. I saw a picture." And then of course, uncharacteristically, he gets upset.
Yes,
and actually hits her a couple times,
which is insane because we got revelations
which
earlier.
we kind of brushed over.
We didn't talk really about. We kind of glossed over it, but I guess it's appropriate now because of why he became a cop was because his father was an abusive, piece of shit human being, and beat his mother, ruthlessly
in front of him
while he witnessed it. Yeah, while he witnessed it, and he couldn't do anything about it, or even if he tried, he couldn't do it. So he basically wanted to stop that from happening to other people.
And I think that also makes it very interesting of a comparison, on the comparison between him and Ed Exley. Both of them have had fathers that have like left their lives, but in different ways.
Right.
Ed's trying to live up to his father, and Bud is trying to live down his father. What his father did to him, but they're both trying to be better than their dads in a way. But it's like they're both going at it different ways. And Bud's reflecting his father, though he doesn't want to be his father, being a
in that moment he breaks.
Well, he definitely does, but he's still though
his code, like his moral code.
The moral code of not hitting women, definitely, but still, him as at a core, he's a physical person. He's an angry person, and
the only way he knows how to deal with situations is in a physical way.
So, though he's trying to be more than that throughout the film, in this moment he breaks and shows the worst side of himself. And Ed Exley is almost trying to be too methodical.
What is interesting, and something I didn't bring up this whole time, is that although I said that Exley is, a straight and narrow, he is pretty corrupt.
Well, he is self-interest.
He's manipulative. He bends the rules and breaks them for personal gain, which is pretty.
But he does have a line though. He does have a line where he doesn't, when it comes to the job, and like I said, he has somewhat of a lack of empathy. He doesn't look at the people; he looks at the job, and that's where that's where he has to grow as a character in the story. But
but in the moment, like just going back to Bud breaks in that moment and becomes his literal, the thing he hates the most. He becomes, which is an interesting kind of fall from grace for him in that emotionally broken moment. And what is also, I think, what gets lost in that moment, because we're focusing so much on Bud White, is we're neglecting the manipulation and the abuse that I think the women, specifically under Patchett, probably go through. Specifically, what we see from Lynn Bracken's perspective is basically she's used as a pawn in this situation, and probably other situations that we haven't seen.
Because she thought she was helping him, before she gets hit by him. She's like, I thought I was helping you, and.
Well, she was probably told that, gaslighted to believe that. You know what I mean? And so so she's been psychologically abused as well, and perhaps physically abused for all we know. Obviously the Patchett guy is not the world, and probably the clients that she had, for all we know, are not good people. I mean, she's going through a lot of abuse herself, and she even gets more physically abused after this. So I think the one thing I think the film neglects, and I really wish it was brought more to light, is her perspective on things. And granted, it's not her story. She's kind of just like a cog in the wheel of this entire interconnecting story. But I feel like there's a lot more to say about her character than is being portrayed. And I find it very interesting that Kim Basinger did win the Oscar for her portrayal in such a role that I think is limited in terms of just overall plot activity. But the scenes she does get, the scenes that we really haven't talked about, her one-on-one with Russell Crowe, is very good. We get her whole backstory of how she's from Arizona, and she came here like everyone
like the
else,
Simon Baker character who came
looking to pursue a dream or a fantasy of the Hollywood and Los Angeles and bright sunshine and happiness and opportunity, and then reality hits, and the reality is that it's not all sunshine and rainbows.
All right, Rocky.
I gotta bring it up once in a while. Come on.
But
Come on, so you always gotta fit that Rocky reference in here somewhere.
I'm not against that. But Bud goes away. He as soon as he does it, he regrets it and runs away and drives off. And so now he's looking for Ed, of course.
He's looking to kill this guy.
and Ed's at the moment he's back at I guess the police station. He's looking through information, getting it all down in his head how Dudley's connected to everything, and then Bud shows up. And he's not ready. He's not ready to talk. He's ready to kick some ass. So
y'all ready to kick some ass?
Yeah. Choose some. He didn't. He's out of bubble gum. He's out of bubble gum.
Yeah, I know. But I was thinking of that line from Dazed and Confused, where Ben Affleck's first line in that movie, and probably the first line of his career, is like, "Y'all ready to bust some ass?" When he's got the paddle for the kids. But anywho, so yeah, and then Exley's trying to stop him, saying,
Well, first off, Bud walks in, shows him the picture, and then he just starts going after him.
And he's like, "It's not what you think," but he's following in Jack's footsteps and looking at, the information that Jack was looking at. So he's piecing it together like Jack did, but he can't get a word in edgewise because because Bud's just beating the heck out of him all across the room.
And finally, I think he gets his gun away from Bud and hits him in the head and pulls the gun on him and gets him to stop long enough to tell him what's going on. And then he knocks the gun out of his hand again and then throws a chair out the window. And that's when. And now he's done. And so.
Yeah, now he's all tuckered out, and now he's all. Now they're all like. Now he's calmed down, I guess.
Well, now he's gotten through to him enough to know that he's not the person that he's got to direct his. He's been manipulated by Dudley, and that his direction needs to be at Dudley. So now they're going to work together finally to do this. And the first place they decide they're going to go is Pierce Patchett, and which once again, you gotta look his name up, but the cinematography in this movie. There's a lot of great, it's not as much of an attention as it should be, but one of the great things about, great cinematographers is framing. And I think there's not enough emphasis on framing. There's more emphasis on like style, the color grading and all that kind of junk like that, which can be great, but
I like how you frame that. You phrase that.
But it's just like, the actual how you frame a shot and what's in the shot is very important too. And there's some great like just framing in this specific scene where they both knock down a door. You see him you see Exley in the foreground, you see Russell Crowe right up close, and it's just great them going, a lot of shit like that throughout the whole movie that's just perfectly executed shots.
Yeah, really. I mean, it got nominated for Best Cinematography, and the cinematographer is Dante Spinotti.
Yeah.
Or Spinotti.
And I think he worked with Curtis Hanson a few times.
He also worked with Michael Mann on Heat and The Insider.
Which Russell Crowe.
The Last of the Mohicans.
Yeah.
So yeah, those are some excellent looking movies, and he was nominated for 2 Oscars. One was for LA Confidential, one was for The Insider.
Okay.
Interesting.
But
both with Russell Crowe, as you said. Yeah.
But so they go into Patchett's place and they find Patchett dead.
Yeah, he's dead. Goodbye.
It looks like he slit his wrists, but we know that that's not what happened.
No, because his fingers are broken.
His fingers are broken. They think he might have even been drugged. But Dudley's cleaning up. He's getting rid of all the loose ends, and I think from there they.
Well, doesn't
Well, they go pick up Lynn. They go pick up Lynn. They try to.
Oh.
They call the cops they call the cops that are closer
because they're closer.
And they took the West Hollywood cops take Lynn in to keep her safe so that she doesn't get knocked off too. And then from there, that's when they split up. And
yeah, Bud goes to see. Hudgens' body was placed. People find out that Hudgens is dead. That's where Bud finds out that Hudgens is dead, even though he had seen him earlier. And Exley goes to see Lynn at the police station because she's been roughed up, and she's been beat up, and obviously Bud doesn't want to see her, and because of that whole situation we just talked about earlier. and um they end up at like
Well, this is where they both get set up for a trap, and Bud kind of knows it's a trap, but he knows that it's got to go down basically. So they both get
they both get called to the same place.
Both get called to the Victory Motel, which is where all the shit's gone down. You know, that's why Bud White kind of knows something's weird, because he's been there many times. So they get there and they get cornered. All these other corrupt cops that work for Dudley are now about to ambush them.
Yes, and there's this great climactic shootout scene in the dark in this, like I said, this motel. And I don't know if you noticed in the background, but there's like these oil drill rigs in the background, just working. And what is interesting is like they when I was watching the making of that feature on the special feature on the Blu-ray, they were just talking about how they found this location and how it was like like far away from Los Angeles because they just couldn't find the right location. And the further away they got from like Los Angeles, they found like these oil fields, and how like they didn't realize that there's oil being gotten out of the ground in California somewhere. And so like that's where they found this motel, and that's where they set it. And they also talked about how like they couldn't get people to loan their houses for like shooting, because like people were just sick of just like Hollywood and movies and TVs like just asking for permission to use their houses and stuff. And I'm like, but for me being like an like an East Coast person where that never happens, I'd be like, yeah, sure, why not? I do it all the time. I don't give a shit. Just pay me. As long as you pay me, you can have my house. You want my car too? Do it. But it's just like, I just found that to be interesting. So everything is set at this, shoddy motel in the middle of nowhere where everything goes down. Great editing, great, sequence of, just action.
Yeah, I love the shot where Russell Crowe's like in the floor and the guys start making their way in, and then Ed's been shot in the shoulder, and he's kind of like, kind of barricaded himself behind a wall, and then suddenly Russell Crowe out of the darkness shoots the guy through the black hole in the floor, and that was pretty cool. And then it kind of at the end there gets down to where they're almost out of bullets, and Dudley finally walks in, of course, after everybody else has been killed, and then oh yeah, of course, and Dudley shoots Russell Crowe, and he falls to the ground, and then
he gets shot at
least a couple times, and he falls to the ground, and then Dudley kind of walks towards Ed, and Ed's out of bullets at the moment, and says, and then, Ed's like, Rollo Tomasi, you're the guy, and then he's like, who is he? Dudley's like, who is he? He's like, you're the guy that gets away with it. And then, Dudley cocks his gun, and then before he can shoot.
Bud stabs him in the leg.
And then he shoots him again through the cheek. In the cheek.
Yeah.
Through the cheek, and then Ed gets enough time to grab the shotgun nearby, and
he's holding up with one hand. One hand, he's pointed at him. And then basically...
This is where Dudley decides he's going to try to be political. He's going to try to make it...
He's going to manipulate the kid. He's going to be like, what are you going to do? You going to shoot me? Or you going to arrest me?
Yeah.
Because, which one are you going to do? So they start walking outside, and then Dudley, says, hold up your badge so that they know we're cops. Yeah. And he's walking away, and actually shoots him in the back.
Yeah, he decides he's not a cop, so he kills him. and this is where his, I'm not saying that was a good thing, but like, I think he decided in that moment that, the world's better off without him. Like, it's like, we can't, it's the justice that needed to be, he learned, he answered the question that he asked earlier, and he decided to take some justice into his own hands instead of, because obviously the system is so corrupt that it got as far as him. And of course, we've once again forgot another scene. We forgot the scene where Bud and him went and saw the DA, and they tortured.
Oh my goodness! Yeah, they tortured him in his office. They like hung him out a window, Batman style.
Yeah, and they get information about a little bit, but it's not nearly as important as the rest of what we talked about. But so yeah, he shoots him in the back, and then the cops all show up. He lifts his badge up, and then Ed is sent in for questioning, of course, to get the skinny on everything, and the guys, the DA is outside listening, and the chief of police is out there listening, and they're like, this.
We basically get a whole breakdown of like a whole,
how corrupt everything was, how far it went.
Exposition of just how basically everything went down, and it's quite involved.
And basically the chief of police and the DA are talking about how they can spin it, and then Ed.
I was just gonna try to break down everything. It's just it's really difficult to try to who basically the Dudley was kind of running things in the vacuum that Mickey Cohen had left.
He was trying to take over the drug racket.
Doing it. And he was trying to take over the drug racket, and he was doing it through manipulation.
Well, he was trying to eliminate. Obviously, he was trying to eliminate all the competition. Buzz Meeks and Dick Stensland were working for him at one point, but then they tried to steal. They tried to hold back some of the heroin for themselves to sell themselves. But then when Dudley found out he had Buzz killed, along with Stensland, had them killed. So that's where that started with them. And when Dudley had to kill his own, that's what caused things to kind of start to unravel. When cops are killed, then the investigation, the spotlight got kind of turned. It opened it up a little bit. So
yeah, and then basically Smith, and also Smith and Patchett were using Hudgens' blackmail photos to take over, not take over, to manipulate things.
Well, manipulate the political side of things.
Yes, the political side of it, and seep into political corruption. Because there's the one scene where, it was probably a councilman or somebody. He changes a vote on something because
has to do with the highway construction that Pierce Patchett is.
Yeah, because they have pictures of him with one of the prostitutes. I think it was actually with Lynn, and I think it was actually that guy that
the congressman
got kicked out when Bud went there for the first time. Yeah, the congressman and whatnot, and
he breaks it down, and they're over there trying to spin it, and Ed's already.
Not only that, but they're at one point, I think the DA is like rubbing his head, and he's like, "Oh shit, this whole thing's gonna destroy everything. The police, the people are never gonna trust the police ever again. Yeah. It's gonna be the end of everything."
And Ed's already knowing that though he can't hear them, he knows that they're already talking about how they're gonna spin it. So he says out loud, he's like, "Hero." He's like, they're like, "What?" He's like, "You want to turn him into a hero, but you're going to need more than one hero." So then, once again, for his own gain, he becomes, basically they make Dudley out to be a hero trying to stop corruption, and he got killed in action, and that, of course, Ed was the lone survivor, and so he gets another medal.
Yes, he does.
Another medal, and.
Doesn't he also get another promotion?
Well, I don't. No, I don't think. I mean, I would assume he's going to get one, but I don't think at the moment it says that he got one. I think they still called him lieutenant. And so then he's done with the ceremony, and Lynn Bracken shows up, and she's about to head out of town, and then surprisingly we find out Bud White didn't die.
Yeah, I thought he died.
I thought initially when I saw this movie, I was like, there ain't no way he lived through that shit.
Yeah, he got shot 3 times, point blank range.
And he's alive. I mean, he's a tough son of a bitch.
They have a great moment, together right there. Yeah. I think, a great moment,
understanding each other,
camaraderie, connection. Where Bud White looks a little out of it. Perhaps he is drugged up on pain medication.
Well, there's that, and he's probably also, he's going off with Lynn back to Arizona.
Well, I mean, but also he looks like he's dazed.
Oh yeah,
and he's not.
He's
really
got a tube.
He's got
a tube.
He didn't talk or anything.
He's got a tube that's going to his mouth. I'm sure he's got some drug going on there. But I think he's also probably done with that life. Also because I think that being a cop also has sent him down a pathway that he's maybe ready to move on from.
Right.
But there's definitely a mutual understanding there and a mutual respect that they both gained for each other in that moment. And then, Bud and Len drive away, and that's the end of the story.
Yeah, she has a great line there. Like, I think she said, is it like some men get the world and some men get a trip to Arizona or something like that?
Something,
and that's the end of the movie. So it ends on an interesting note, because it's not quite a like victory happy ending, because the LAPD is still covering up stuff and still brushing, making their bad guys out to be heroes.
I was going to say, they become heroes, like in this particular situation.
The bad guys
win, but then they also use corruption to also keep the status quo once again.
Which doesn't really fix anything.
No.
So you're just stuck in the same place. Like the same
They're not willing
to
start from scratch.
They're not willing to change. Basically.
Yeah, I mean, at least not any. The change has to be more gradual, is the way they look at it. Which, in a sense, I understand, because like something that can completely tear down something, it's like what we're going through now. Like, some people think we just need to defund police, which I think is ridiculous. We actually need to train our police better, and I think that means more money.
Well, I think that a lot of them. I mean, this is a whole political stuff. We won't go down that rabbit hole, but I think the funds that are being allocated to the police need to be put into better use in other areas.
Yes, it means more training. It needs to be used for more training.
Well, yeah, but I mean, like, instead of spending, I don't know, 10, 20, whatever $1 million on, state-of-the-art tactical tanks or whatnot, perhaps you could use that money for.
I don't know that
training,
that's something that
like
I don't think that that's usually an issue. I think it's.
I'm just saying, I was using
because cops already don't get paid enough anyway, so we know it's not going to the people.
I'm just wondering where all that money is going to. I mean, this is a whole.
It's something we don't know enough about to really be educated enough to talk about. I just know that this movie really, I think, still has some really contemporary things to say about police and about how the perpetual nature of corruption, whether even with our heroes in the story. I don't think, honestly, though we're supposed to look at these characters as heroes, they're still not. They're still morally questionable heroes. They're complex, and
they're gray.
They're definitely gray, and I think that makes for a more interesting movie. It keeps the conversation going, and it's more real.
I think it's
more real to real life.
That's what makes it. I think that's what the complexity of the characters and their amoralities. Not being moral or immoral.
Yeah.
Is what makes it film noir.
Yeah.
What makes it a noir is the complexity of those characters. Of course, dealing with murder mysteries and police and corruption and then the narration and the setting and all that stuff is film noir. But it's just like that adds the extra layers to it.
There's no clean people in this movie. I mean, it's
Oh no, not at all. You definitely not. Like what you just said, the ending itself isn't clean. The ending itself is still relatively dirty. But just to put a bow on this, like I said, it was nominated for a bunch of Academy Awards, only winning 2. And it, of course, was nominated for Best Picture. And I just want to see the Best Picture winner for that year, I believe, was Titanic. And just throwing it out there just to see
Gross.
what... I just wanted to see, best... hold on. They really don't make this easy. I just wanted to see what it was nominated up against. I can kind of guess it off the top of my head, but I want to be accurate. I'm starting to lose my voice as I do at the end of every episode. So yes, it was Titanic, Good Will Hunting, The Full Monty, As Good as It Gets, and L.A. Confidential.
Pretty good year.
Pretty good year. The Full Monty is an underrated movie.
I think As Good as It Gets is a great, comedy.
I think
comedy
it's underrated
romance
as well. You know how much I love Good Will Hunting. But yeah, Titanic was the big winner.
And Titanic is not a bad movie. I think it got its it was definitely one of them, big hits. So it had a lot of steam behind it with the public, but also
it definitely had the zeitgeist of the time. I remember this movie being gigantic. Came out when I was around 10 years old.
And not even just the movie itself, but like it had a Celine Dion song that was really popular.
Yep.
Also,
Young Leo, Kate Winslet.
It also had a lot of for the time, and it still looks good, pretty decent today. Graphics that look.
Oh yeah. Talk about a period piece. Yeah, early 20th century. It was an epic, dramatic romance, kind of a throwback to that style of movie making. James Cameron, great director. So yeah, I don't really attack Titanic like a lot of other people.
I don't attack it, but I just
because I still see.
I just think LA Confidential should have won that year. That's just me.
It obviously had a better screenplay.
That doesn't matter.
That doesn't matter. Anything, but so that's
Titanic was the sexier pick, so that's why it won.
Literally sexier.
But all right, well.
Yeah. So Steven, do you have a film for next time, or did you pull a me?
No. I've been going back and forth, but I think I'm going to go with it. What I decided to do is kind of a big one. It's one we've talked about. We went back and forth about. We've kind of skirted around it, but we hadn't done it yet. And that is Laura, a film noir we both really like.
It is my favorite film noir of all time.
Oh, okay. Well, then I picked a good one.
I was actually just thinking what my favorite film noir is and what my favorite film noirs are. And I always put Laura right up top. I was thinking because we already did Out of the Past. Yeah. We already did like Gilda. I was, a movie I'm going to probably rewatch really soon is Leave Her to Heaven. Is another good one. But we already talked about that. We talked about that before on like Top 5 or someplace else. And yeah, there's a lot of film noirs. But yeah, Laura's amazing. We get to talk about Dan Andrews and Gene Tierney. We get to talk about one of my favorite like characters in the movies, that guy who's in it. Clifton Webb, who plays Waldo Lydecker. Yeah. What a name. We got a young Vincent Price in that movie too. It's gonna be a good one. He has one of my favorite not off color, but just off the cuff lines is like he just goes, "I like that hat," and I always say that all the time I see a hat, and I'm just like, it just
nobody understands where that's coming from.
Nobody understands where this is coming from. Well, but that sounds good to me.
Well, Laura's next week. Where can we find you, Andrew?
You can find me on Twitter at Capzilla6, as well as my YouTube channel, Capzilla Productions.
And you can find me on Facebook, Stephen Billings. You can find me on Instagram at Cinema Discovery Project, or on Letterboxd at Cinema Discovery. Thank you. You can also find the audio for this podcast on Podbean and Apple Podcasts. Thank you again for listening, and hey, keep on watching them movies.
I know I will.